Hello, BookTube. I have a tag for you today, a tag that I was certain when I saw it that I had already done. I, of all people, should have done the BookTube Dog Tag. But I searched my backlist, and I've talked about dogs endlessly on this channel, but I don't think I've ever done this tag. It was created by Danika, Ellis, and I saw it on Alex Unabridged, where he did a great job with all of the answers and also delighted us in seeing close-up pictures of the cute, boopable nose of his dog, Marvin, who is a standard schnauzer. So Marvin is a schnauzer, just like the one that I have, only 5 times as big. So that was fascinating. And all of the prompts are about dogs. So I thought we'd do that today, even though it's not Tag Tuesday. So prompt number 1 is tell us about your dog. And that is, this is my dog. I have a 6-year-old miniature schnauzer named Frida, who came to me by random chance when one of my 2 old dogs was still with me. My pointer, Malin Moore, was still with me. She was blind. She was largely deaf. She couldn't really walk. She had muscular degeneration in her hind legs. So if you got her on all 4 feet, the front legs have all the power and do all the work. The hind legs are really for adjusting and directing and whatnot. So if you got her on all 4 feet, we could totter her around for a while. She couldn't do hills or inclines at all at the end. But on level ground, on sidewalks, she could go outside and go for walks and enjoy them, which was the key for me. She could enjoy them. I had to help her. She didn't have the strength to squat for peeing or pooping. I had to help her do that. And it had to happen a lot. She had to go a lot. She had, she had only one love in her life. That was my other dog, my Basset Hound, Lucy. And when that ended, when Lucy went away, when Lucy died, Malin didn't really have all that much interest in being around. She was fond of me, and I loved her. So she stuck around for a while, and that turned out to be long enough so that she was around when I got Frida from an acquaintance that found a cute-looking puppy online and thought, wouldn't this be fun? Of course, it's a huge, huge obligation you're taking on. It's not just a thing that's going to stay cute and have no problems. I didn't read My Friend the Riot Act, but I wanted to. I wanted to tell her what I want to tell every impulsive dog buyer, every buyer of a cute little puppy. I want to tell them what I'm going through right now, outside in the sleet at 3 in the morning, at 4 in the morning, at 5 in the morning, holding an old friend up by their hips so that they can pee and defecate, getting a lot of the pee and defecation on you, never getting angry, always being loving, helping them in every way, knowing there's only one end and that there's not a good end here. That is what you're taking on. And that's at the end of 15 years of obligation. It's 15 years of wonder and glory, too, of the greatest thing in the world. But they're part of the same thing. You can't have the one without the other, although I know for a fact that plenty of dog owners do. I've used to work at an animal shelter, and we would have dogs dropped off because they had become slightly incontinent. Just we're driving by. We're not going to park because we really don't have that much time. We're going to the movies. But this person who's lived with us for 15 years, we don't want them anymore. They peed on a perfectly good carpet. I've seen that there are dog owners like that out there, so I know that it's true. But nevertheless, this friend was happy to give me Frida as a tiny little mouse, a tiny little creature. You can actually see her in my videos. When I was doing the Western Canon starter kit, I was up to the Victorian era. If you go to that, you can see this little dog. Also, I was doing Shake Tube at the time, and if you go to the Shake Tube video for, I think, Romeo and Juliet, you'll see this tiny little mouse just sitting there, brand new to the world. And Frida doesn't remember those days at all. She doesn't remember Malin at all. So that chain is broken, which always is a little bit melancholy for me that she doesn't remember Malin at all. We met a full-grown pointer that was a dead ringer for Malin years later, and it sparked nothing in Frida, nothing at all. She was just a baby. I mean, you don't remember what you saw when you were 3 months old. She doesn't remember it. So she has been my only dog for all this time, just her and me, and she is still a dynamo. keeps a close watch on the mouse population here at Hyde Cottage, and bustles around outside. It's only very recently, just in 2023, that I've noticed that sometimes she stops bustling to just walk. And you might think, well, big deal, every dog walks, but she has not. She has always bustled along. And it's just recently, it's just this year that occasionally, every once in a while, the bustling is still the norm, but every once in a while she will stop and just walk for a bit. Because 6 years is not anything that a dog can shake off. That's a significant amount of time. They don't live that long. So she's my one dog now. Every once in a while, there are murmurs on the frontier of another dog. But I, in my life, have never gone out and got a dog. They come to me. I get, need brings them to me. Happenstance brings them to me at the right time. I know that sounds like mystical mumbo jumbo, but I don't mean it that way. It's just been the pattern for 80 million years that I will get a phone call, or I will, I found my basset hound Lucy in traffic. I found her as a puppy running around in traffic. Did my best to find her owners. I would not have voluntarily given her up without finding out why she got away from them. But I would at least wanted to find them, let them know she's okay. But I never did find any owners for her. And considering what she was like, that's probably understandable. They probably beat a quick path out of town. But it's always been something like that. And so I'm not going out looking, and therefore Frida is still my only dog. A rare instance where I have only one dog. So that is prompt number one. Tell you about my dog. You all know about Frida anyway. If you watch this channel, she's the star of the show. Then prompt number two is, what would be your dog's favorite book? Here I want to stress that I'm glad that my dog doesn't have a favorite book. I learned to be around dogs and to communicate with them and to know them and to spend time with them in the way that time passes for them before I learned how to do any of those things with humans. Dogs are the ones who socialize me. And that world is a non-literary world. And going into that world is like taking a calming bath. It's a perfect reset from the human world, from talk, and from even the printed word, which I love. So she doesn't have a favorite book, and I'm glad of that. But if she did, I'm pretty sure it would be The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Because my baby is a little bit dominant. Just a tiny bit dominant. She's not aggressive. If you heard her on the street when she sees a dog, especially a bigger dog, especially a bigger male dog, you might think, from the sound of her voice, from the noise that she makes, you might think, well, if you let her near that dog, she's going to rip his head off. But she wouldn't. She wouldn't do it. She talks a good game. She wants to make sure to set the tone of any encounter with another dog. But she's not aggressive at all. She wouldn't bite another dog, even if another dog bit her. And plenty of dogs in the neighborhood, plenty of dog owners have been patient enough or known me for a long enough time so they know to try it. I wouldn't blame them at all if they didn't. It looks like this is just a touchy, vicious little dog who will bite their dog if it gets close enough. But that isn't the case, and there are plenty of people in this neighborhood who now know that if I tell them something about a dog, it's definitely true. So they've allowed their dogs to come close, and they see. I won't say that in those circumstances those dogs become Frida's friends. She doesn't really have any dog friends. She doesn't really. She'll stand there, awkwardly, stiffly stand there and look at them while they're cavorting around. She'll let them sniff her all over, and she will sniff them all over. She prefers that when she's sniffing them, they stand still like they were dead. She certainly doesn't play. And ordinarily looks on even rambunctious invitations to play as just a mental disease. The look on her face is just, what on earth is wrong with you? She's not a friendly dog in that regard. But it's very important to her that other dogs know where things stand. So it would probably be The Art of War. Then let's see here. What is the next prompt? Use the first letters in book titles to spell your dog's name. Well, I have my library here, my entire library. So let's see. So we need an F. Okay, there we go. This is the new book from James Lee Burke, Flags on the Bayou, which is not a Robichaux novel. This is not. He has an ongoing series of contemporary, investigative thriller type novels. that are pretty good. He's a very enjoyable writer, very enjoyable. But this, I gather, is a historical novel set in around the time of the American Civil War in the South, so it would probably deal with, conflicting loyalties and also slavery. I'm perfectly willing to go wherever this author goes. He's done a couple of other historical novels. They were very good. But that's an F. Flags on the Bayou. Then we need an R. Okay, this one we've seen before on this channel. Still don't have an actual paper copy of this thing, but this is by Christopher Clark, who's a historian I really, really like. And this is his new book, Revolutionary Spring, which is about the revolutions of 1848. The revolution swept the world in 1848. Due to a whole bunch of reasons, it isn't just coincidence, but due to a whole bunch of reasons, each one of those revolutions has had a whole library of books written about it, and this is a big panoramic look at all of them. What they had in common, what the foremost personalities were, what they wrote, what their lasting effects were. I'm sure that it will be great. This is a historian that, I don't need to worry about him at all. I know that I'm going to like him. Then we need, what do we need? An I. We need an I. Let's see here. Okay. Well, this is at the top of my reading library. The nice thing about one of the innumerable nice things about having an ebook library is that the books that you've read recently or that you are currently reading will be right there. They'll be usually in a separate, on Android devices, they'll be in a separate file called Reading Now. On an Apple library or whatnot, they'll be the first ones. They'll be at the top of the pile. Of course, your printed paper books don't do that. The book that you're just reading will be the last one that comes to your hand. You'll be searching for it. But this one is I'm slowly reading chunks of it, rereading chunks of it, for an obvious reason. This is Inside Story by Martin Amis, who just recently died, and his death hit me harder or in a different way than I was expecting. I'd known, from the 1960s exactly how this person would die. This is a person who never stopped smoking except when he was asleep. Other than that, always. Literally always. Meals, church, restaurants, even no smoking restaurants, just literally always. In classes with students, all the time. So I knew that he was going to die of that. I knew that that was going to kill him, just like it killed Christopher Hitchens. And it did, but he knew that too. Which kind of takes the outrage element out of it. But the whole time that he was writing, I was reading his books. And that feels different. For instance, when I read in the papers that his father, who was also a novelist, died, I didn't feel this way. Because his father had been setting out literary tables and reaping literary rewards and getting in the press long before I was reading. But Amos, it's different when an author only a couple of years younger than yourself actually dies. And you have been following that author's career more or less professionally for the whole of its length. That is weird. That is a weird thing. It's not a question of me liking his novels. I've never liked a novel by this author, but I loved Inside Story. I know that it says in big letters there, a novel. That's simply a lie on the part of the author. This is a memoir. And as a memoir, it is fantastic. It's even better than Experience, which was a memoir by this author that I really liked. I also love there's a collection of his work called A War Against Cliché that is also really, really good. It's my line of work. It's deadline literary prose, but on an order of excellence that very few people ever reach. And in the back of my mind, those of you who've watched this channel for a long time will know this already. Or there are 2 or 3 of you who've known me IRL in real life for long before BookTube. In the back of my mind, I keep a steadily evolving roster of authors I intend to revisit, systematically revisit. I know that on this channel I'm often opinionated about authors that I don't like, who I think stink. I'm perfectly happy to sound off like that, but except in very rare cases where I have given an author all the chances I'm ever going to give him. Those cases are actually very rare. And aside from those cases, all the authors are slowly revolving in my mind on this carousel of authors I will revisit. Because I don't want to dislike any body of work. if there's wonder there, and you talk to enough Martin Amis fans, for instance, or Ernest Hemingway fans, or you talk to enough fans of a certain body of work, you realize there must be something there, because there are plenty of people who felt it. I want to access that. I want to feel that myself. Not with all authors. With some authors, the readers are just wrong. That's all there is to it. They're coming to it with a whole bunch of predisposed baggage, and that's what's making them see what's not, in fact, really there. I've never actually felt that about Martin Amis, which an old friend of mine pointed out yesterday. We had a long exchange of emails, and he pointed out, I bet you're going to revisit this author, and I bet you're going to do it sooner rather than later. I said, well, I revisit a lot of authors. He would probably be on the list anyway. I revisited his father, for instance, and very much am happy that I did. Why? That wouldn't be any big surprise. Why would you say that so pointedly? And he said something very interesting. He said, I have been able to tell from every word you've ever written about this author's novels that you don't just dismissively dislike them. They bother you. And that's true. And that is the kernel. That is the seed of maybe them pleasing me. So naturally, I went to this book. When I learned that Amis died, I went to this book because this is so good. It's just so good. In addition to everything else, this made headlines because it dramatizes Amis's friendship with Christopher Hitchens. But it also tells the story of his family and his lady loves and his father. And in addition to all of that, all of that is done really well. I don't know why there was a brief fad. It's actually still going on, where these things are called novels, where publishers just lie to their readers. I mean, I know why it happens, because if you call something a novel, people who think that nonfiction is scary or boring will buy it. And they won't notice. If you label it, a lot of them won't notice that they're actually reading nonfiction. But I don't like it. I of course don't like blatantly false advertising. Most autofiction is just your Twitter feed, barely adding quotation marks. This is a lot more than that. But in addition to all of that memoir stuff, there's also a ton in here on the craft of writing. Just amazing. It's just an amazing book, folded and folded and folded in on itself, as engrossing a reading experience as I've had in years. And I remember the existential crisis that caused me when I read it for the first time. I think I pretty much chronicled that on this channel, where I got this and I sniffed at it and disdained it because this author has almost always displeased me. In his fiction, when I was seeing the initial listings for this book, I was assuming that a novel was not a lie. I didn't know the publisher was lying about this until I read it, and then I read it and couldn't get it out of my mind. I couldn't believe. I went back and reread chunks of this. I will keep living in this book for a while, but I'm pretty sure that my old friend is right and that I will be revisiting the fiction of Martin Amis. I would have been tempted to do that anyway, after that fantastic TLS piece on the Rachel papers that we talked about on this channel. After that piece has been sticking with me, and I should have realized the time frame involved, because that piece was done on the 50th anniversary of the publication of the Rachel papers. I remember thinking at the time, that cannot possibly be true, until just yesterday I reflexively thought of Martin Amis as a young author. So this is my eye, because this is definitely going to be the seedbed of more. Now we need an E. Sorry for the long digression there. Okay, we can do a David Murphy book. This is by Ben McKenzie and Jacob Silverman, and it's called Easy Money. It's about cryptocurrency, casino capitalism, and the golden age of fraud. I don't know how much of this I will understand. In 2023, I've read now 2 books on cryptocurrency. And aside from, one of the books was really heavy on creating a narrative about the guy, that famous guy who I think was sentenced to 1 million years in prison, something like that. The king of cryptocurrency. I forget his name. He had 3 names, and they're often made into his initials. I don't remember his name at the moment, but one of those books crafted his story. The story of a personal narrative. But whenever these things deviate into what cryptocurrency actually is, and how all of this weird scam money works, they quickly lose me. So maybe this one will too, but I'll give it a try. I think it's an interesting subject. But that's E. Now we need a D. What are we going to do for D? What have we got for D? No. Okay. All right. Well, this will work. It doesn't have to be a good book, right? Because those of you who maybe are new to the channel, I have a remit on my channel. I have a shape to my reading. All of us do. Even the people who say I'm a complete mood reader, they have a shape to their reading. And my shape is new releases in the American book market. In the 15 or 16 genres that interest me, but the interest doesn't have to be because I like it, and the books don't have to be good. As long as they're in those categories, I will read them anyway, because I want to know what's being published in the current publishing year, in the current publishing season. I want to know what's out there. I want to read it and know what it is. I don't know why, but I get more satisfaction out of that than I would out of a more typical reading remit would be, that I reread a favorite now and again, that I pick up a book, a novel from 2 years ago that I remember being a big hit. I'll finally get around to this. The more typical reading remit would be something like that. I don't like to do that. It gives me more pleasure to stay current with what's out in the American book market. And for D, we will deal with a crappy book. We will deal with this. This is by Glenn Beck and Justin Haskins. And Justin Haskins has a lot to answer for, because Glenn Beck could not write this book on his own. Glenn Beck, for those of you who don't live in America, maybe aren't up on your American politics, is a brainless, schmarmy, cry-on-camera, alt-right commentator. And this is the second book in his Great Reset series of books. This is called Dark Future. I don't know if you're going to be able to make that out, but those evil figures on the cover with the scowling faces wearing dark tactical gear. You can't really make it out, but they're wearing dark tactical gear. Those three figures are Bill Gates, George Soros, and Joe Biden. As the ultimate evils in the world. They look menacing. They dress in black. And at the bottom there, backlit by light, is a heroic band of truth tellers who will fight against the dark future envisioned by these three puppet masters, these three grand puppet masters. The future all revolves around the racist theory of the Great Reset, which Glenn Beck has been pushing along with his alt-right contemporaries for years. It is historical only in the sense that it is lifted almost wholesale from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's horrible, iniquitous stuff. It is designed to kill off whole sections of the population. I don't know if Glenn Beck in his frumpy sweater vest would actually be the guy to pull the trigger, but he would be perfectly happy to provide intellectual cover for the ones who do, and that's what these books do. I think the first book was called The Great Reset. I think I read it and condemned it last year, and this is the sequel, in which a ragtag brave band of truth tellers fights against the dark-jacketed evil. So that's our D. Then we need an A. No, okay. The new Dean Koontz, After Death, which, if I remember correctly, is a horror novel in which the main character has to find, it's not just that he's curious, it's that he has to find out what happens after death and figure out a way to use it in order to save some MacGuffin thriller plot in the present. It sounds promising. I don't know what I make of what I have to assume is the late Dean Koontz. His author photos get more and more ridiculous with him with that helmet of dark, rich brown hair, like he was, Davy Jones from the Monkees. He's 90 years old, so he certainly doesn't look like that. I don't know who he thinks he's fooling, but I have to think of these as late Dean Koontz. I mean, he's been writing books for 50 years. Surely he's not going to keep this up forever. But I don't know what to make of late Dean Koontz. I read it all, and some of it seems very tired. A lot of it does not. Well, you Dean Koontz fans would be the ones to tell me, but a lot of it doesn't seem like it's written by him. and this one, as often as that, they also please. So I will definitely do this. These big name authors like Kuntz or King or Daniel Steele or The Ghost of Tom Clancy, I follow. I read their books anyway. I'm fascinated by the momentum. I don't think Dean Kuntz has had any momentum in his publishing career since the Odd Thomas books. And then you have to go 25, 30 years before that to find more momentum, the last burst of momentum. And yet they keep coming. These authors keep coming. They keep coming out with books. And that fascinates me. That whole top-heavy sort of zombie shamble of writerly productivity fascinates me. It shouldn't exist. It shouldn't happen. I feel certain that Dean Kuntz novels the hardcover of After Death, I feel certain that it will not sell out, that it will not sell enough to earn out the money that has been spent on it. And I'd be willing to bet that it's the 10th novel by Dean Kuntz for which that could be said. Which is weird and wouldn't happen in any other business. But I could be wrong. Maybe there's a secret cachet of readers that buy these things up like hotcakes. I will read this, and I'm sure that I will find parts of it fascinating. Of course, there isn't anything after death. This would be the thing that I'll be watching for. If the whole of the subject is put forward for characters to earnestly talk about, that's fine. If the book assumes that the reader agrees that the main character is not looking for Brigadoon, that there is something after death, and will the character find it or not, well, then I am going to have problems with it, because there isn't anything after death. Death is a process. It's not your 3 o'clock appointment. It's a process. Picture a little toy top. You spin the little toy top. You do whatever it takes, the little tool, or you get the knack of doing it yourself. It's on a tabletop. You spin the little toy top, and it is spinning so fast that it's blurring. And the speed of its spinning is keeping it upright right on the point of its base. And it's so much fun to watch. And then gradually it slows down. And the slower it gets, the wider its ambit. It starts to wobble and lose its momentum. And then it gets even slower and finally falls over. It's not done moving yet. It falls over and sort of rolls around. And eventually, if you watch it long enough, it will roll to a stop. And when it rolls to a stop, no one in the history of tops, the ancient Egyptians were spinning tops. In the history of spinning tops, no one has ever looked at that top when it stops moving and said, I wonder where the spinning top went. No one has ever said that. You can see it. It is self-evident that would be a ridiculous thing to say. Same thing is true with the human body. One little bit from mommy and one little bit from daddy come together. They start a top spinning. And if you're lucky, that top gathers momentum and matter and experience and neural engrams and neural pathways and vast amounts of memories for a long time. If you're lucky, that goes on for a long time, just spinning and spinning and spinning. And you reach a point where it is a beautiful thing, blurring and beautiful and thrilling. But you also reach a point where it is slowing down, where the spinning is slowing down, and all of a sudden what was a tight revolution is now a wobble. Trust me, the wobbling happens. And then the wobble gets worse and worse. And then finally the wobble stops. All revolution stops, but the thing is still moving. It's just sort of thrashing around in ungoverned patterns. And then it comes to a stop. And that's that. That's that. The beauty is not, well, if you're a really good top, then you get to spin forever somewhere else in another room. The beauty is that for a while there, you were spinning so fast that you were a blur. That is great. That is all that a top expects on a tabletop. So no one, anyway, I will definitely give this a try, but I mean, okay, for you soft-hearted folk, I want to stress, as I always do, there is no emergency. I know you're hearing the end of the world, but there is no emergency. What there is only 2 frosted donuts left at Dunkin' Donuts. There is no emergency, so don't get all worried. And if the litigious among you, having already got all worried, are irritated and asking, isn't it illegal for them to run their sirens for an emergency when there isn't an emergency? Yeah, it's illegal. What are you going to do? They're armed and you're not. Anyway, anyway, uh, I'm far more curious than that I am about what actually happens in this book. I'm curious about what the rest of you do. There are Dean Koontz fans listening to me. I'm sure there are. What do you do with this author? If you've had book after book after book that feels like, it wasn't very good, it certainly wasn't anywhere close to his best work, and if maybe you think like me, it didn't read like he wrote it, then do you keep doing it? Do you keep reading his work? I'd love to know about that. That should be another video without all the rest of these prompts and without endless sirens in the background. But anyway, that is A. So we have done with Frida. So the next prompt is, what's your dog's relationship with books? And a lot of dog owners here are probably going to sing out that it's one of food. But Frida is not a chewer. She doesn't chew anything except stuff that I give her to chew. I've had dogs that did that, including my Basset Hound Lucy, who didn't chew on books so much as she chewed on furniture. She chewed on furniture like the world's fattest beaver. Just contentedly munching on the wood of a bookcase or a chair or whatnot. But Frida doesn't do anything like that. Nothing at all. She doesn't misbehave in any way. The simplest way to put it. She doesn't misbehave in any way. She was incontinent inside the house when she was a tiny, tiny little puppy. After that, and I mean right after that, I mean at like 2 months old. After that, she did not need to be house trained. It never crossed her mind to go in here. She wanted to go outside. Never had needed to do that. Never needed to train her on a leash. Not to pull, not to choke herself or anything like that. She understood perfectly well that we're outside together. I'll walk with you. I'll walk relatively close to you. I'll go out a little ahead of you because you're a little slow, but most of the time I'll walk with you. Never needed to teach her any of that. Never needed to teach her anything. She just gets it. And I hear from a lot of terrier people that is more true for terriers than it is for any other kind of dog. I think there's a book to be written on that by me somewhere along the line. But she has no interest whatsoever in randomly chewing on things. So she doesn't have any relationship with books. She doesn't know what they are. She's not interested in them in any way. Doesn't view them as food. Doesn't view them as toys. She just ignores them. So then prompt number 5 is, what's your favorite book with a dog? And for me, it would be Coulter by Rick Bass, which I've talked about on this channel before. And you wouldn't think that because the book is about a hunting dog who dies in the book. So there's 2 strikes against it. But nevertheless, Rick Bass is such a beautiful writer that it's the best book on a dog that I've ever read. Then prompt number 6 is, find a book on your shelves with a dog on the cover. We can certainly do that. Of course, it'll be these shelves. I've been spending time on these shelves all day. Why should I go to the thousands of paper books that I have on my shelves? Why should I do that when I've got this thing right here? It's at 100% power. It's as light as a feather. It remembers where I am in every book. I know no need for bookmarks. I can find all of my annotations. Everything's right here. Why would I bother? So what do we have here? Find a book on your shelves with a dog on the cover. Well, that would be this one. Mark Bekoff. This is Dogs Demystified. A Guide to All Things Canine, with a foreword by Jane Goodall, who you would often think of as an association with chimpanzees, but her earliest love of animals was dogs. And this, I'm sure, I haven't read it yet, but I'm sure that it won't demystify anything for me. In fact, it will probably mystify things. Usually it's been my experience that when a book says, here is the truth about why your dog does X, Y, or Z, it's not true. The thing is just a human guess. But I'll give it a try, absolutely. I mean, I don't let dog books go by, new releases. And then prompt number 7 is, find a book on your TBR that has the word dog in the title or dog in it. There's one coming up. I'm going to read this week. Yeah, here we go. The new DK Encyclopedia of Dogs. There is the DK symbol there. Those of you who know your illustrated books will probably know DK. They do fantastic oversized illustrated books. Just amazing the work they do on the page. And they had an earlier dog encyclopedia that didn't look like this. It was white, and I had it for a long, long time. This will be the standard thing. It'll be a rundown of dog evolution, dog behavior, dog anatomy, basics of dog training, and there will be a 2-page spread in here of all the major dog breeds. what they're like, where they come from, what their nature is, all that sort of thing, their lifespan. It's a standard thing. There are many, many books like this in the course of any 10-year period. There won't be anything in here that I don't already know, but it'll be beautiful. It'll be just beautifully designed. DK books are always beautifully designed. So I will, this is on my TBR. It won't take long to go through. I mean, yes, it'll be 400 pages long, but it won't take long to go through. And I don't know how reviewable it will be either. A review of this would, I mean, if you're going to review this, you would either have to just make the review all about Aren't Dogs Great, or you would have to make the review a point-by-point comparison of what's different between this and the last edition of the DK Dog Encyclopedia and how many people are going to care about that. So probably this is not all that reviewable a title, but I will still gobble it up. These are my people, so I will still do that. And then the final prompt is, who would you like to tag? But Alex in Alex Unabridged says it the same as me, that, you know, A, I don't know who does tags. B, I don't know who's done this. This tag's been around for a while. And C, I don't know who has dogs. Who's a dog person? Nothing I don't think would really need to be, except for question number 1. You wouldn't really need to be a dog person to do this. But I want to throw the door open the same way. I will leave a link to Danika Ellis. I'll leave a link to Alex Unabridged. Feel free to do this tag if you have a dog. I would love to hear about them. I would love to see them. And I'd love to know where dogs intersect with books in your life. But anyway, that's the BookTube Dog Tag. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.